I've loved ribs my whole life. There's just something primal about sinking your teeth into that smoky, tender meat and feeling it melt in your mouth. So that night at the pit stop, when the smell of barbecue was thick in the air, I didn't think twice about ordering a full rack. I could practically taste it before the server even put the plate down in front of me. The first few ribs were perfect. Each bite was a blissful mix of sweet, tangy, and spicy. I was totally in the zone, savoring the meal. Then, about halfway through, I picked up the next rib and bit down hard, ready for more of that juicy goodness. But instead of tearing into tender meat, my teeth met something tougher. I froze, confused by the strange resistance. This rib wasn't soft or juicy. It had an unnatural, rubbery texture that didn't yield the way ribs usually do. I pulled back, looking down at the rib with a growing sense of dread. That's when I noticed it. My mouth still tingled from the impact, but my mind struggled to make sense of what I was seeing. There was a fingernail. I blinked, horrified, and stared closer. This was no rib. It was a finger, a human finger. The curve of the knuckle, the outline of the fingernail, even a faint swirl of a fingerprint at the tip. It was unmistakable. My stomach heaved, and I spit out the bite that I'd just taken, barely able to register that I had actually tasted it. The flavor I'd once enjoyed now felt sickening, like a dark, twisted parody of everything I loved about barbecue. I gagged, the taste still lingering in my mouth, and slammed the finger down on the table, my hands shaking uncontrollably. I waved frantically at a server, unable to form the words. When he approached, I managed to choke out, "There's a finger in my food." I must have looked half insane, my face pale, my eyes wide, but he took one look at the plate and immediately blanched. He couldn't tear his eyes away, his expression shifting from disbelief to horror. "Oh my God," he muttered, staggering back as if the finger itself had bitten him. By now, the other diners had started noticing the commotion. People whispered, strained their necks to see, and a quiet wave of confusion and disgust rippled through the room. A woman across the aisle caught sight of my plate and screamed. The place erupted into chaos, people jumping up, shouting, the once warm and lively atmosphere now cold and haunted. The manager came rushing over, attempting to calm the hysteria, but he looked as shell-shocked as I felt. Within minutes, someone had called the police. They arrived quickly, their serious faces confirming just how surreal and disturbing the whole situation was. One officer leaned over my table, inspecting the severed finger, then looked up at me with grim eyes. "When did you realize it wasn't part of your meal?" My mind was in a fog, but I managed to stammer out the sequence of events, the bitter taste of that bite still burning in my memory. "I bit into it," I admitted, the words barely more than a whisper. I thought it was a rib." The officers exchanged a glance that sent a chill through me, like they knew something they weren't saying. They carefully wrapped the finger as evidence, and I heard them mutter words like investigation and forensics, as if they were dealing with a crime scene, which I suppose they were. After that, the police questioned me about everything I remembered, asking about every detail of my order, my server, the exact moment I'd picked up the finger thinking it was food. But I could barely think, let alone speak. Every word felt heavy, like it was weighing me down, the reality of what had happened pressing in around me. I stumbled out of the restaurant in a daze, the image of that severed finger seared into my mind. I didn't eat for days, and every time I closed my eyes, I could still feel the sickening toughness of it against my teeth, the way it hadn't broken the way ribs should. Weeks later, I was still haunted by the sensation, that strange resilience I'd brushed off in my rush to enjoy my favorite meal. I never found out whose finger it was or how it had ended up in my food. Every so often, I still hear rumors, stories of missing persons, unexplained accidents, unsolved cases. Each one leaves me with a lingering unease, a reminder that sometimes the horrors you encounter are real and have no explanation. And that finger? I don't think I'll ever forget it, or the grim taste it left behind.